And then we're live. Hello and welcome
Yes.
to the Yeg Show. My name is Tia Diemo. We have a show for you today, and I'm so excited to introduce Mrs. Moji Taiwo. She's not a stranger to us in Alberta. She's a retired civil servant, she's an author, she's a teacher, she's a coach, and a community activist. She joins us tonight from Calgary to talk about her book, I Give Because I'm Blessed. I am blessed because I give. Good afternoon, Mrs. Tyrell. Thanks for coming on to the Yeg Show.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, my sister. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm very, very happy to be here.
You're welcome. When you wrote this book, it took you about a year and a half, about 2.5 years to write this book. What was playing on your mind at the time?
Well, the question would be what was now playing on my mind?
All right.
Because I delved into writing the book because I merely wanted to chronicle my experiences as an immigrant. But what transpired or what came to light was the moment I started, I found out that I was actually writing more of the deep-seated experiences that I've long had and buried
Mm,
that I was not thinking about at all. I
mm,
thought I was just going to write a beautiful book with happiness and everything. Then
mm,
I realized that there, there's more to my story that I want to share than just the glossy part
of course.
of being a successful immigrant. There is peak and valleys, lots of sadness, loneliness, lots of trials, and lots of tribulations. And that's what I discovered. And sometimes I had to put the writing aside and weep
Mm. Just to heal
to,
from the trauma. Mm,
yes, to weep and get through, determine, just have a release before I begin again. You know, I will weep and I will be thinking, how did I ever survive this? How did I ever go through? But I did.
mm.
And so the book itself, it's actually taking me back to process and to relive some of those experiences.
So when we talk about the experiences, you're in your 60s now, and you've been in Canada since 1978.
Yes.
I was born in 1979.
Whoa, you're dating me. You're really dating me.
And it touches me when you say the book helped you heal, as in it helped you look back on some of the very difficult immigrant experiences, some of the trauma. That's what it is, trauma. Now we're
Mhm.
talking about it. What are some of these experiences?
Okay, well, there is different stages of it. Actually, I did not put everything in here, but
Okay.
the ones that I put here, I will touch base on them.
All right.
One of them is going on a bus and asking for directions, and people will refuse to talk to you or sit by you, or they clutch their purses as soon as they see you. Or you're walking on the street and you smile and people will look away.
Yeah.
So that was that. But the
Yeah.
flip side of that, because I'm also a very optimistic person, the
Mm.
flip side of that is that in those days, when I would see a black person, a total stranger on the street, we will stop, we will acknowledge each other, we will speak, and we will exchange phone numbers.
Mm, mm,
And some of those people are still my friends today.
mm. So
You
in
know,
19,
so
so in the 70s, Mrs. Taro, 70s Calgary, was that were black people a rarity then?
yes, there's
Oh,
very, very, very few black people. So to see black people, you either go to universities, you see a few black people there. But if you go to hospitality industry like hotels or hospitals, those institutions, you see Black people that are working there as janitorial service people.
Wow, no, it hurts. When you sit, when you describe that you're walking on the road and you look at people and you want to say hello and they look away, that hurts. Ouch. And you try to explain what that feels like, and then you went through this struggle pretty much through your 31 years career with.
Before we even get to the 31-year career in corrections, police stopping you at random.
No, but you're a Black female. Was this what they did in the 70s?
In the 70s, actually, my husband and I were university students, and we rented a place in downtown Lethbridge. And we would go to school all day long and return home late because, international students, immigrant students, all you do is study.
Yeah.
There was no family or anything, you just study.
Yeah.
So we would come home at night, but so we were never really there. We were always at the university. Right. So the landlady who lived downstairs, and we have a studio upstairs, we noticed that at night, because it was in December, we noticed at night that we couldn't get warm. It was always icy cold. So we asked her what was going on and that we needed heat. But it would just shrug. She would shrug. She wouldn't say anything. But one day we were just frozen. We couldn't take it anymore. So I approached her only to find out that she had a portable warmer for herself. And she shut off the heating system in the house. So we couldn't say, whatever we said, it wasn't registering with her. Eventually, she said, you guys just move. You guys just move. And we said, we don't mind moving, but we've already paid you.
All right.
So will you give us our money back so we can move? And she said, no. So we called the police, thinking that, it would be the right thing. The police talked to her, and the police came back and said she wanted you to move, so you have to move. And we said, we don't mind moving, but what about her money? And he turned aggressive. The bottom line, the moral of the story is that her neighbors had seen us as being Black and had put pressure on her to get rid of us.
To evict you. Oh my God, that's pretty hostile. What?
And the police stood there until we started packing our stuff. It was in December. It was freezing. It was cold.
I know. We
didn't get our money back. The police didn't come to our aid. That was our very first experience of justice. And then many more, including when I started working in corrections. The police officer will stop me as I drive out of my own neighborhood because I was driving a nice car and driving out of a ritzy neighborhood.
When I hear these stories, my blood rises, and I just get so angry. And
it is crazy. So when people say all lives matter, we're not saying all life doesn't matter. We're saying our life is equally as matter as everybody else's.
That's true. That's true.
A person wrote and said, well, I don't get what you guys are talking about, like Black lives and this systemic racism and whatever. And I asked him, I said, when was the last time? And this person said that, oh, this doesn't happen in Canada. And I said, yes, I've been in Canada for this long. It does happen. I asked him, when was the last time he was walking his own dog in his own neighborhood and a police cruiser stops him? And I asked, when was the last time that happened to you? He said it never happened to him. I said, it's happened to me. In my own neighborhood, I was walking my dog and the police cruiser parks behind me and I asked him, how can I help you? He said, well, do you live here? And I said, yes. Why? Oh, some lady just called. I say some lady called because I was walking my dog. Well, he really didn't know what else to say.
Yeah. Because and it's all these racial slurs that we face every day. Is a little one that takes a bit of our humanity day by day, and then
day by day. It just eats at you. It hits at you. Yeah.
So I mean, you're an exceptionally strong woman, and not many of us as resilient as you are. And I think the Black Lives Matter movement draws a big attention to the inequality. Why do we have to suffer more? Why do we have to pay more? Why do we have to go home? It's more of a burden than
If we have to prove ourselves 110% of our counterparts, but we get credit for 80% of our effort. If you're brilliant, you're too brilliant because you are not expected to be brilliant. If you are underperformer, you are not performing well, that's the reason to let you go because they expect you not to perform well anyway. So it just seems like you can't do enough. We just can't do enough. But yes, but I refuse to let that define me. And that's how I raised my kids too. And of course, my children were born here. So they went through their own challenges, being the only Black child in the class. And the teachers immediately assuming that because they are Black, they should do something wrong. They should do something bad. They are always looking at an alert, looking for them to misstep somehow.
To fall, to fail.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
but we cannot relax. We cannot let it be. We have to keep talking. We have to keep striving. We have to keep forging ahead. I hate to be a victim. I refuse to be a victim.
That's right. That's right.
And it's chronicled in this book that 31 years in correction being a Black female with an accent and with a different name. After I left, people say, I didn't meet you, but I heard about you. And that's what I urge all of us to do, if we can. Because I do realize not everybody can do that. But we must never be a victim.
Right.
Because that's what they want.
I mean, when I reflect upon your story and when I was researching for this, your personal motto appears to be excellence, because that's one way you shut everybody up, by just being excellent at what you do, because they won't be able to find faults with you.
Mm-hmm.
If your work is above board, can you speak to that and how our community needs maybe more? I don't know. It's hard.
Yes, you see, with our community, that's why I refuse to be a victim, because they want to demoralize you. They beat you down emotionally. They beat you down psychologically. That's what racism do. Because you are isolated, you are forced to go back to your own corner, to what you know, right? And if you go back to what you know, that means you leave the workplace. They will have driven you out. But if you refuse to leave and you work ahead of what's expected of you, which I know it's unfair, because when other people are not working ahead of their project, why should you? But that's our reality. And in order not to be a victim, in order to assert yourself, because you need to know more than they do.
Yeah.
And then they have no room. And what I also say is that never bow down, because the moment you shy away from, confrontation, the moment you shy away from standing your grounds, the more permission you're giving to them to stomp on you.
Walk all over you.
To walk all over you. And as I wrote in my book and throughout my career, both in school and at the workplace, I stand for honesty. I stand for integrity. And I do not compromise when it's not needed. Yes, I'm a team player. I'm a team worker. I always make sure that I bring something substantial to the table. But I never compromise my integrity or my color or my culture. I've had people say, well, we're tired of you always talking about your this, your that, because of course, I'm highly involved in the Nigerian community. So whenever our independence or gala or whatever is coming, I take the flyers to my work and try to sell tickets to people. Yes, some people will come, some people will buy tickets and not show up, but that's all right. And some people had the audacity to say, well, we're tired of you always talking about this and whatever. And I basically turn around calmly and ask them, if I don't talk about my culture, what will I talk about? Yours?
Oh, true. True. Fair enough.
And that usually, I'm not stopping you from talking about yours. So why is talking about mine any of your trouble?
Why is it giving you a headache?
Yeah.
Would you say racial injustice, as it were, has reduced in 2020 than in let's say in the 80s or the 90s?
I would say that, well, I don't want to say that it's reduced. I would say that it's different.
Okay.
In the 70s and early 80s, people can be racist openly towards you and you had no recourse. Whereas in the 20s, it's not as open as it used to be. And also there are policies in place that, you can use. There are avenues where you can make a complaint, So people are not as openly racist until our friend to the south made it, appealing to be openly racist again.
Right. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I have to say, at least in this day and age, we have voices and we have a recourse. In those days, you didn't have a recourse. When the first 2 years of my employment with Abata Justice, I was underpaid. With the government, you're paid according to your education and experience. I found out through a mutual friend of mine that we're carpooling, riding together, that I was actually being underpaid. Why? Because I was Black.
That's just painful. That's just not nice.
So I found out through her because I have 6 years of post-secondary education and she had 2, and we're being paid the same. Yeah. So I had to be bold enough and, talk to a supervisor of mine who said you can call human resources.
Right.
And I called and spoke to the person who was in charge of my file at the time. And he said, no, that's what we are going to pay you and this and that. And I talked to this other person. That person said, take the bargaining unit booklet, the union booklet. And the person walked me through it and said, look, you are under here. This is how much you should have been paying. You should have been paid, not over here. And I quoted it to this man again, and he insisted no, until I started speaking to his manager. It's his manager who now took it up and said, don't worry, let me look into it. And that person happened to be a female. Looked into it, wrote me back and said, yes, you are right. And you will be reimbursed. You will be paid for the 2 years that we owe you.
Amen. So what kept you going all the years you worked in spite of all the slurs and injustice and your teammates ganging up on you? What kept you going? What was...
Well,
my question is, why didn't you quit?
I'm not a quitter.
All right.
I don't. If I want to leave anything, I will leave at my own free will. It won't be because somebody did something to make me leave.
Okay.
The only time I left because I didn't want to have to report to a bigot, I leapt upward. I decided to get a promotion instead of leaving.
All right.
So this person was the obvious bigot in the building and a bully.
Right.
And I know with my position on the unit as a unit supervisor and case manager, and him being a manager, operations manager, one time or the other, our path will cross where he would supervise me directly. And instead of me quitting, I vowed that I would never report to that type of a person. Instead of that, I became his colleague. Instead of that, I aspired to be a deputy director and to be his colleague. And of course, we had it out when we became a colleague. So,
do you think working in corrections made the racism worse or less so?
Well, correction is by virtue of the job and the institution. It's a hard place to work. It's a really hard place to work. It's like being in the police force. There is lots of the boys club mentality there.
For
and what's that?
For white males.
For white males.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And unfortunately, too, a few of our black or colored males that gets in because they want to belong so badly. And I don't blame them. Because they want to belong, because they don't want to be the subject of the target, they form a cohort of some sort. And once you have a cohort and you have a sense of wanting to belong at all costs, bad behaviors happens.
All right.
And when bad behaviors happens, people start covering for each other. People start covering for each other. So corrections is bad for that. I think I wrote in my book, because I work with young offender corrections and young offender branch of the ministry. I wrote in my book that I enjoyed my work, not because of my colleagues, but because of the kids and their family and the impact that I had on them. The fact that I can go through the malls and some kids will approach me and say, do you remember me? And I'll say, no, I don't remember you. And they will start to tell me, yes, you work with me. I came to see you with my mom. When I did this or that, you scared me, but I'm doing good. I like that.
Really? Oh, that's brilliant.
I like that. So correction is very hard to begin with. And then for me, going in there as a black woman, and rising up
Mm.
to, there's so many times they planned that I'm giving direction to a youth worker and they're ganging up and telling that youth worker not to follow my directions.
Eish.
Or
Okay.
I'm sensing that relationship between this worker and that young person is not professional. And I'm calling that person on it, and they are telling that person not to listen to me until everything that I was saying and documenting will come to light. And then they'll fire the person. But they'll fire the person, but they will not come back to me and say, Moji, you're absolutely correct. And we're sorry that we were not listening to you.
I didn't listen.
And that happened more than once.
That's just not fair. It's not right.
Yeah.
But would you say the system is biased towards Black offenders? I know you had 5
Absolutely.
years ago.
Oh, absolutely. It's
So,
biased towards indigenous children. It's biased towards Black children. Yeah, absolutely.
that's not okay. So when we talk about systemic racism, can you describe how you experience that?
Well, systemic racism is, and I experienced this a lot when I was trying to advance my career.
Right.
I will go for interviews, and I know, actually, let me walk back. So, as a youth worker, somebody, our supervisor, went on a maternity leave, and I was working with this other group of people. But
Yeah.
on my unit, and I was working with another girl. This girl, everybody knew that she wasn't doing, she's a nice person, but she didn't do any work. She would just go in the office and put her feet up and be on the phone when the kids are all over the place. So when the time came for an opportunity to act as a supervisor, they gave it to her. So of course, I was always bold. So I approached the manager who made the decision, our team manager. And he was stupid enough to tell me that, oh, Moji, we need you on that unit. We need you on the floor. And I asked, I said, you need me on the floor. Why will you need me on the floor? Oh, you are good with those kids. So I look around and I say, oh, so because I'm so good,
I don't deserve
you need to punish me, and somebody who's not good needs to get a promotion.
needs to get ahead.
It took him by surprise and said, oh, I didn't think about it that way. And say, yes, I do.
It's exactly the way it is. Yeah.
But of course, they didn't reverse that decision. And I left.
Right.
Still within the same ministry, but I left that institution in Strathmore and came back to the institution in Calgary.
All right.
So that's systemic racism. Systemic racism is when you work really hard and they always tell you that, oh, you came this close, but you are second. You came this close. Every time you came this close. Or they tell you that you overqualify for the position. This systemic racism is, I witnessed it as a manager hiring as a recruiting manager and being involved in interviews and training, where we will screen applications. And my colleagues will be putting applications aside because of the names of the applicants. And I'll say, why is that? Well, we may not be able to pronounce this name, or if they have this name, they may have an accent. I said, but at least let them come for interview. Give them that opportunity to present themselves to you before you rule them out. That's systemic racism.
What do you say to people who say, oh, it doesn't exist and there's no such thing? Canada works on merit. You know, if you're good, you get, and you can get the job done, you will get promoted. What do you say to skeptics like that?
Well, it's because it's never happened to them. See, what doesn't affect me, I would say I won't know. If it doesn't affect me, I won't know. But I take issue with those people. Instead of saying that it doesn't happen, they should say, I'm not aware of it because it hasn't happened to me.
Okay. All right.
I have another colleague, a friend of mine, really, I think, at work. We are on the same, we're all managers. And I think one day something was going on, and I made comment about the bigot that was giving me a hard time in her presence. And she said, oh, I don't see him that way. And I look at her and I said, why would you see him that way? He has not directed his insult at you. He has not directed his ignorance at you. So why would you see it that way? I'm merely sharing my own experience, not yours. So, that's what people, and people are quick. They want to defend each other where there shouldn't be any defense.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So ultimately, this person mistreated another white female. This person mistreated a white female because of her sexual orientation. And that white female filed a formal complaint against him. And that's when they brought me in. And I was heard for the first time in 25 years. Wow. Because another female, but a white female, filed a complaint against him because of her sexual orientation. And she included me as a witness because I was going through the same from him. That day, I broke down. Everything that I've held in for over 20-something years, dealing with racism, the systemic racism, isolation at work, having to look over my shoulder at work. It came crashing down that day. They had to tell me to just take my time. They just left me in the room that when I'm ready, after I collect myself, I could begin to speak. And what did they do to him? They merely transferred him to another jail. They didn't fire him. They transferred him to another jail, away from myself and the other lady. If it's a Black person, I chronicle in my book, there are things that people were doing in there that if I'd done or attempted a quarter of it, I'll be gone.
A long time ago.
I'll be gone.
Oh, yeah.
That's systemic racism.
So you find them more tolerant to Caucasian than they're less intolerant to Blacks, and I see what you're saying.
They will accept, where I work, they will accept a Caucasian male that's inept, ineffective, as long as he belongs to the boys' club. And he plays hockey. If he plays hockey and he belongs to the boys' club, they will overlook all his inadequacies.
His ineptitude.
Yeah.
So is there any hope for visible minorities here in Alberta, in spite of everything you've described? Because it's just so horrific.
It's especially hard because, what I fought for, again, like I said, I go through all these things, but because I'm a fighter, I always look for solutions.
Yeah.
So when I was a manager in charge of recruiting and training and things like that, I strive very hard to get visible minority hired.
Yeah.
Because, and my point to HR and to the other managers is, we are our staff members, our staff complement did not represent the population that we serve. So, because if you have indigenous children, you have Black children, other minority kids, and all of the staff are white, they can't relate to those kids culturally. And some of them are right out racist towards those kids.
Oh, yeah.
So during my time as a manager, I think I was a manager for 6 or 7 years, I tried to, hire, and I did. So our staff complements was beginning to look different. And I wrote at the back of the end of the book that I hope they continue it. I have not kept in touch, so I don't know if they continue that practice or not.
Have they kept in touch with you? They would have read the book. Have they said anything about the book to you in any way?
A few of them that I actually mentored, and these are not Black staff, these are white staff. That I mentored, I've actually bought and read the book and got back to me. Some Black too, but I must confess though, also in as much as I encourage the Black, staff, Black young people to come in to work there, I also encourage them not to stay there for long.
Wow.
I encourage them to use that position as a stepping stone to better opportunities, to better themselves, to gain experiences. Because when you are in corrections, there are so many other departments in corrections and in ministry, in justice and solicitor general than just working in jails. Working in jails, it's like working with, police officer, except you're in lower ranks.
Right.
So I do encourage them to continue their education, to show those people that you actually have plans for a better future. So some of those kids have taken that lesson and they've moved on.
Right.
Yeah, they've moved on and higher.
So when we talk about immigrants coming to Canada or immigrants that are already here, what can they take? What are the top 3 points they can walk away with after reading your book?
Well, 3 points. You are not alone. You are never alone. Whatever you are going through, it's temporary. And in order to make it temporary, extend yourself. Extend your circle of friends. Don't keep to the same group because it's comfortable, because that's the same group you know. Don't keep to the same church because that's the same person you associate with. Broaden yourself. There are lots of resources around. When I say resources, I mean people resources, service resources that you can gather, you can learn, that you can benefit from. That's number 1. Number 2, learn the unspoken culture, the society where you are. You've already made the biggest sacrifice of your life. And that sacrifice is leaving your birthplace. There is no more sacrifice you could have made than that. So since you've made that big sacrifice of leaving your birthplace, you are here, immerse yourself. Immerse yourself. The sooner you immerse yourself, the better for you, the better for your spouse, the better for your children. Because if you immerse yourself, you know the educational system. You know the societal system. If you know it, you will be able to help your kids in school. You'll be able to know how they're being taught. you'll be able to help facilitate their own transition into the system rather than waiting until they get into trouble. And you're blaming the culture here. Because I know we tend to think that our culture from wherever we're coming from is better than here. But I always say, because I'm candid, I always said, if it's that better, why did you leave?
It's true.
You know, the third is never, never, ever put yourself in a victim role. If one door closes, it's an opportunity for another one to open. If you can't go through it, go around it.
Amen.
If you cannot go through it, go around it. There are lots of people around that have gone through the same thing. You don't have to go through it alone again. You just reach out. And I know some people will also say too, oh, I don't want trouble from these people. If you don't want trouble from your people, where would you rather have get trouble from white people? You know, so there is always, and my mother always said that if you close your eyes because you don't want to see a black person, so many good people will go by you and you will have missed them too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So always reach out. Yes, you may meet one or two that doesn't gel with you, but that's okay. That's life. The chances are you'll meet one other person that'll be valuable to you and to your family and to your life.
Very well spoken. So what are the actual experiences that we want changed?
The experiences we want to change is not assuming that when you see a black person, their skin color defines them in a negative way. And some people will say, I don't see color. I don't see color. I just see everybody the same. No, I want you to see color. I'm black. I want you to see me as a black person because I see you as a white person.
Oh, yeah.
But what I'm saying is your race, your whiteness should not give you an advantage over my blackness. And my blackness should not give me an advantage over yours. I'm saying treat me as an equal. Give me the same opportunity you will give a white person.
Right.
Expect greatness from me as you will expect from somebody else. But afford me the same respect and dignity that you will afford somebody else who's not black.
Oh, yeah.
Allow me to thrive. Allow me into position of power so that I also can contribute at a higher level.
Right.
That's all we ask for. Don't marginalize my child in class while you're paying attention to other white kids and you're neglecting my child. Don't refuse to call my child's name because it's different. You are the teacher. You are teaching my child to learn. Therefore, you should be able to learn my child's name.
Oh, yeah.
And call my child by his name or her name.
Oh, yeah.
It's just little things.
Just basic.
Just basic things.
Yeah.
When you see me, don't ask me, where are you from? Talk to me about the weather. Talk to me about anything, but don't ask me where I'm from.
Yeah, because that puts a barrier right there.
Right there. You're assuming that I'm not from here. That you are not from here either.
You're an immigrant. Mm.
I was at a restaurant with a friend of mine, and this lovely girl, the waitress, was trying to be friendly. And she turned to me, she says, "Oh, so I like your accent. Where are you from?" And I look at her and I said, how old are you? And she was taken aback. I said, "How old are you?" And she said, "Oh no, you don't want to know my age. I said, "Are you 40?" And she's sure. She said, "No, I'm not 40." And I said, "Okay, if you are not 40, I am more Canadian than you are." And she
Oh,
looked puzzled. She looked. I said, "Do you know why I said that?" She said, "No." I said, "I have been in Canada before you were born. So don't ask me where I'm from."
um, mhm.
I'm sure and I hope she learned a lesson.
You're right, actually. When people say where are you from, that shuts, for me personally, shuts things down, and
Mm-hmm.
you're able to carry on like, okay, am I not part of this? Am I not Canadian enough?
Enough.
What
Yeah.
more do I need to be? Where are you taking this to?
To yes.
You're right. It puts a door, it's a barrier. It's not
Mm-hmm.
very nice as a first question, to ask anybody.
Yeah. There is Rotary Club, a
Yeah,
Rotary Club. They were doing a mingling. They want to invite other people of color into the club. And a
yeah.
friend of mine invited me and I went because she read my book. She's a white lady and she read the book. She was fascinated by it. She invited me and I went. And this older gentleman with an Irish accent asked me, "So where are you from?" And I said, "Why?" He said, "Oh, because of the accent." And I said, "But you have an accent too, and I didn't ask you where you from."
Where you from? That's true. That's true.
It's just, you have to know your rights, learn your rights, and know how to call it. And there are other people there, and he was taken aback. I said, "Isn't that true? I didn't ask you where you're from because we're all from somewhere. And
Yeah.
that shouldn't be a topic of discussion. We came to this Rotary thing so that we can all be inclusive and have diverse group. That's what we should focus on."
It's a bit impolite, I think, and discourteous because I
Mm-hmm.
generally I'm not interested or curious about where anyone is from. And then when you asked me that, you're already you want to peg me, you want to put me into a corner or a hole.
Corner.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that's about. Now, one of the things I love about you is your passion when you um is your passion as a community activist. You are a chronic volunteerer, as in
Yes.
you're a part of the formation of the um, Nigerian Association
Calgary.
of Calgary, yeah. And
Nigerian Canadian Association of Calgary.
there you go, that one. Forms your Most people they say who come from Nigeria or Africa struggle to do any sort of free work. What informs that spirit of volunteerism for you?
It's probably maybe my generation from Nigeria because I've always volunteered, even at home in Nigeria.
Okay.
So I grew up in a home where we were just taught to give. I don't know if you remember reading in my book that I actually grew up in a Muslim home. So every Friday, we will give tea and sugar cubes and piece of bread to neighborhood kids.
All right.
So
Uh,
that giving spirit, it's always been there. And when I was in high school, in boarding school, I was the senior prefect girl in my final year. every Friday is Labor Day. It just bothers me to see young kids under the sun cutting grass. So I will get involved and help them eat so that they can quickly be finished and go home. So helping and giving has always been part of me. I was brought up like that. Plus, I have to also admit that I'm a restless person. I'm restless in thoughts. I'm restless physically. I'm restless in nature. And I'm a true believer that we are all gifted. We all have special gifts to be imparted on other people in this lifetime. Right. So what I do, my whole being, is for this lifetime. I don't worry about the eternal life, because my Creator knows already what I have done.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not worried about that. I worry about now. And what is it that I'm doing, and how am I impacting other human beings? So that's where that spirit of giving and participating.
Volunteering and
volunteering, yeah.
Mrs. Moji Taiwo, you are an author. If you want to show our audience your book, you are the author. I give because I'm blessed because I give. And your book can be found on Amazon. And where can we find your book other than Amazon?
You can find it on Amazon in hard copy, in downloadables, and voice on Audible, Smashwords, D2D. So you can find it everywhere. You can even find, people in Edmonton. You can ask your local library to subscribe and bring it in for you, because in Calgary, it's at the Calgary Library.
Oh, well done.
Yes. So if you're in Edmonton, tell your library to bring it in hard copy or download or even voice. So they'll bring it in for you.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. I want to say thank you for joining the Yeg Show today. I've learned personally a lot about your experiences on race, discrimination, and how as an immigrant, I can go out and conquer. What you said about immersing myself and not sticking to a community. I don't do that, but I like when I hear things like that from you, from other people, and it reinforces what we try to do at LCC Media. Thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. And I hope that I've contributed in my own little way to somebody's life out there.
To the conversation about race is a tough conversation. This one is. We cannot finish, initially I said 20, 30 minutes will be done. We're going to an hour and there's no end to this. We're just going to keep talking and talking and talking. And I'm really grateful for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, that was Mrs. Taiwo. She joined us to talk about her book, I Give Because I'm Blessed Because I Give. Our book is available on Amazon, and if you're in Edmonton, you can ask your Edmonton local library to get a copy for you, to stock it on voice or on Audible or in any other format. So thank you again for joining. We're expecting our next guest to come on the show. We're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, we'll have our next guest on the show. Thanks for watching. Please share.